Thank you, Mr. Werner, and thank you for inviting me. I will give you a two-sided presentation. One is focusing on Heidelberg and what my company is doing for Heidelberg and the initiatives around excellency in teaching and research. And the other one will be about the comparison with European cities which have something in common with Heidelberg. And so to answer the question that was given to us, the first part of my answer will be yes, in Germany we are doing good, and I will show you why in spatial terms. And then the second answer will be no, actually we could do much better when we look to European neighbors. Just as I'm an architect and somehow foreign to this audience, I will give you a very brief introduction of what an international architecture exhibition is. It's a format that has been going on in Germany for well over a century and is always focusing for a long period of time to certain challenges. The first one was in Darmstadt, 1901, focusing on arts and crafts. Then in 1927 on housing in Stuttgart. Then in Berlin 2 times in the 50s and the 80s, focusing on housing and how the challenges there could be met with innovation in terms of architecture and urban planning. And then around the 2000s in the Ruhr region and in Hamburg, addressing disadvantaged neighborhoods. So it's always a program that is not supported financially, but in spirit by the federal government. And these regions or cities said we want for 10 years to have a state of exception to integrate different aspects. And in Heidelberg, we are focusing on the knowledge-based society and its spatial results. For this, we have a long process underway where we try to incorporate different stakeholders and governance structures to be a platform of excellency, basically concerning the built environment. This, of course, comes natural to Heidelberg with a claim for knowledge-based urbanism, because Heidelberg has been in the German epicenter of innovation in academia, and today is, with Munich, the top-ranking university worldwide. The region is a powerhouse for industries, and now in the city, different clusters of excellency are spread in. We had Mr. Radic from Hasey, who's sitting there. We are right now here. And this archipelago of different excellencies in Heidelberg is something that does work well on the academic and research level, as we heard in the 2 previous presentations, but still the connection to the city is rather poor, and the way of working together to become even better is also lacking. That's why the city of Heidelberg put this IBA into place to work with all stakeholders on this. And so we have different format as a platform to discuss really with the Ministry of Science of Baden-Württemberg, with the president of our university, with the mayor and others in workshops, what actually the future could be of the knowledge pearl. And the knowledge pearl is a term coined by Willem van Winden, who says that there are certain excellency universities worldwide, especially in Europe, which have a long tradition and are placed in smaller cities, and therefore they could actually have an advantage towards the knowledge hubs, which would be New York, the London area, or Paris. And there we work on actually connecting the 2 sides of university, research and development, and the city. So balancing basically everyday life and the qualities and spaces needed for it, but also balancing the needs of the spatial needs by excellency in teaching. Heidelberg developed from the valley of the Neckar outwards with the university starting in mansions and then building in the 18th and 19th century first houses, and then jumping to the Neuenheimer Feld where we are now. Now there are military conversion sites opening up for more excellency, and our task is to really look at what could change in the governance structures and in the spatial terms in these fields. So a genealogy of how the research and academia moved out of the city was that it started in the old town, then it went to Bergheim, where the hospitals formerly were and who are now transformed for the social sciences and others. Then the Neuenheimer Feld since 1920s for life sciences mostly these days. And then in Barnstadt, the city tries also to add new amenities for research. And Mr. Radic actually is also involved in the next step, which is the Patton Innovation Park, a former military site, where now there's the aim to really mix research and development and industry in a very specific way. And I want to draw the attention to this structure here, which is the Organic Electronics Development Center, who is funded by the European Union, the state of Baden-Württemberg, and the city of Heidelberg. And here it's an interesting issue to look at how funding, in terms of the governance structures, actually results in spatial terms. And you can tell with this design that it could be a structure that's actually located anywhere. It could be in Silicon Valley, it could be in an industrial campus. It's a child of its own ideas of funding and how actually much in advance a design has to be proposed if you apply for funding and you cannot contextualize it. And that's, of course, the main asset of the Knowledge Pearl in Central Europe, that you do have a certain amenity, a certain city, a certain identity that you could transform. And actually the design also has the aims for integrating these very different aspects of global cooperation, but also public attractions of a mixed city. And the example of the Organic Electronics Development Center shows how the different systems don't really collaborate so much. So as an IBA, we work with bottom-up and top-down initiatives who work in the field of the knowledge-based society and aim for the inclusion of different aspects of city life, balancing the two. But also we find, of course, that certain aspects cannot be mixed and certain research institutions need a seclusion for other findings. We look at very international examples. Copenhagen, Denmark is one of them, and work on different sites to test what could happen if Germany or Heidelberg would plan more integratively. And we look at also the educational part, so the everyday life of students and pupils, how there actually the school can open up more or collaborate more with academic institutions, how interconnectivity, transport is working, and how also the landscape or metabolism could actually be something that integrates science and everyday life. And in the end, it's a co-production process that is aiming for something different that makes Heidelberg competitive in the future for the European competition of excellence universities. We have federal funding for certain areas where we have open space developments to integrate different institutions. We have mobility studies who connect different campuses, the technology park and the innovation park here. And we look at abroad a lot to compare what could actually change, because we want to be avant-garde, not only in terms of architecture, but also in terms of governance. And there we find very specific things when we talk to university presidents and mayors from Europe mostly. And we look also beyond Europe. The digital media city in Seoul was on the table to discuss how there the integration of different aspects works. And also the city and University of Lund were here last March, and very interestingly enough, also it has the same evolution of the university moving out of the city slowly. But then what happens in Lund, which we cannot work in Heidelberg so much with, is actually that they integrate the public and scientific development. They have the Scandinavian village, SVS, Science Village Scandinavia, now based between these two accelerators in the north of Lund, and they have an integrated plan with the municipality and the university and the research money that comes from the European Union also to design an integrated neighborhood. Something else like this is happening in Leuven, also Knowledge Pearl in our regard, where the city and the institutions founded Leuven Mindgate, working together in the development of the different territories, integrated planning from the beginning. And also the city of Cambridge, the mayor and the pro-vice chancellor were here to present how they actually built housing on their land to make it possible to grow further with housing also the people who are not so well paid. So my point being here that Heidelberg and Germany, of course, does integrative planning and can therefore welcome a lot of excellency in academia and research and production. But what hinders right now is that compared to these examples, we do not have the capability of develop a strategic integrative plan. For example, the University of Heidelberg does not own its own properties. It's owned by the Finance Ministry in Stuttgart. But the budgets for the scientific research is done by a different ministry. And then we have money coming from the federal level, as we just heard. We have money coming from the European level. And so the University of Heidelberg is incapable of making strategic plans like this for their development, because if you apply for an excellence cluster, you have to hand in certain designs already, and then the money comes in 5 or 6 years to hit the ground. And so there's no really possibility to integrate the planning in terms of academia and research with the planning on the ground. And therefore, we also heard a lot of stories how Heidelberg is lagging behind because they cannot offer land, because the land is not owned by the university. So we are working with the ministry and other institutions to integrate more, to have maybe some testing grounds where the university could own or lease a property so that it can be moved faster without the governance and political structures up the government levels to the federal government to really adapt to the innovation necessary. So IBA is the state of exception for 10 years, but the governance structures in Germany are not really fit to compete with the other knowledge pairs as we find, and we will work on it until 2022, when Heidelberg hopefully then will offer some solutions for the knowledge-based society. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think it was nice to hear that Copenhagen is an example. Can I just say that in Copenhagen, in Denmark, universities are not allowed to own their own land either. It's also a big issue for the universities in Denmark. But there, I guess, they have the advantage of having a much more flexible political system and not as elaborate and as leveled as the German. So one thing way up the other. But I think it's very interesting. I think this development of the future of universities and where they go in the interchange with the surrounding city and the mutual shared interest in both growing. And I think we had a discussion earlier about sort of innovation or quality of research. And I think it's two different areas. You can be very innovative and you don't need to have a very, very high level of quality of research, or you can have very good quality of research but still feel you need to be improving on your innovation capability. I think the examples you give combine both, because there you have universities who really focus on quality of research, who are research universities. Like you mentioned Cambridge. In Copenhagen, the biggest research university is engaged in the Copenhagen development process. And I think that is the challenge also for the universities themselves, how to focus on their quality of research to create the environment that's necessary to excel in research, but still also perform really well in innovation. And I think that's a very interesting challenge for the universities. And if you have more views on that, that would be interesting to hear.
I think one of the main aspects is really to compete for the best people. And there, Heidelberg found out that it actually reaches the limit of how it actually can compete with getting the best people if it doesn't invest in the future. So the IBA is a proactive measure to really integrate more the different aspects of quality of life and academic excellency. And just if you look to the river here, the Max Planck Institute for Medical Research, they also have the issue that they get 2 new professors and they have to expand a couple thousand of square feet within months, and they are not ready. And also there is again the German system of detaching responsibilities. So this institution cannot act fast enough because it doesn't have the competence or the links to the local government, and also the administration in Munich is just sending the people and doesn't really work so much for them to really be locally grounded and being able to act. So it really, on many levels in Germany, we always have the separation of responsibilities, which hinders a lot of that, what we would need.
My question is that you made a very nice statement that actually the government, the structure of government is what is a major barrier to accelerating development. I mean, this has always been one of the aims of the Triple Helix, is to question the role of government and the interactions which the government forms with industry and with university. Do you see any role for reforms in government and where they can be initiated when we see dysfunctional relationships?
I'm tempted to talk about 150 years that we need for changing certain systems, but I really actually do believe that actually our format is something where actually there's a platform where people can meet in a third space, so to say. I showed the images where we have our minister, our chancellor, and all these people at one table, so only 20 people of the Max Planck and university and mayor sitting around the table. I think it actually has to be something that's kind of outside the system, and a think tank that works outside the system, and then it can trickle down into the system. But so it has to be actually bottom up with the people who are on top, right? So I think on top everything is very stiff, but if you get the people into a third space to really be imaginative, they actually found common projects, they find common projects to act on, and then it can be fueled back into the political discourse. I don't think it can be a top-down restructuring. I think there I'm pessimistic as the previous speaker, that it has to be done by example, and that's what we are for also.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. In this morning, we had a discussion about expansion of the Silicon Valley actually produced this question about gentrification into the city in terms of housing programs. And I coming from Beijing, right now, Beijing tried to kind of regulate, they try to move the universities to the suburban area, so they kind of spreading out. And there are a lot of discussion about building university parks, so they move the university from the center of the city to the side next to maybe industrial zone or something. But in your discussion, there's to me, it's very interesting idea of how university can live together with the city and contribute to the local innovations. So what will be your opinions in terms of relationship between the university and the city?
I mean, the first things that we actually had to learn here in Heidelberg was that there is not one academia, there is not one science, there is not one kind of research. So you really have to differentiate very much about, are you talking about technical universities, about life sciences or humanities, and you have to differentiate very much of what spatial kind of integration is possible, not only by regulation, but also by spirit, which the people have. And but we do believe that you can actually offer certain windows or transmission zones where actually everybody can be more connected to society. I mean, also Germany doesn't only have a poor system of extra money coming from philanthropists, it also has a very poor tradition of academic institutions giving back to the city with volunteer work or anything like that. So there are many layers which are besides the research and besides the spatial things, which are more about how we actually deal with each other and what are the opportunities to meet each other. And there you have to differentiate very much. But we found out that also people who praise this area here for their research facilities are complaining that there's not so many Heidelberg people connected to this place, which then is a boomerang for them when they have discussions about certain new projects, right? So it has to be we are living in an open society in a way, and in this open society we need to be much more open with our exchange of experiences.
I hope you can revive the civilization of German or Heidelberg, the history, the modernization, and the future. And maybe we can clone another city according to your visualization or simulating from history perspectives. Would you like to do that for us? If you have some fund supported by the World Bank, something like that, and I hope we can copy one or clone one in detail, your mapping, your city, your German, and we can copy one. I like the culture from history, the philosophists, great thinkers, and the industry system. I hope the scientists, the engineers can cooperate with each other and map in detail the history, the modernization, evaluation, and the prediction of the future. And we can copy here and there. And I think it's an easy way for us to realize the ideal in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. That was more a comment, right? What was that question?
My question is, would you like to cooperate with us?
Oh, yeah, let's talk afterwards. I mean, we are very interested in international cooperations and have some Asian contacts, but we should talk about. We are not a firm that's big of capable of expanding, but we are interested in comparing different localities in the world and how they are doing, and there we can learn from each other maybe. Yeah. We'll be in touch after. So.
You addressed what I want to say already, but maybe I can repeat it. If you look at who works in the Heidelberg University, in the DKFZ, in the EMBL, in all these Max Planck institutes, I would guess about 50% are non-German speaking, and about 95% are not from Heidelberg.
Exactly.
So isn't it naive in a way to expect these people to interact with the local community?
It is naive, but at the same time it is necessary. I think if you want to place Heidelberg on the global map, you have to also accept the unique selling propositions that Heidelberg has. And there's a split going on between the city as its citizens and the institutions. And if Heidelberg, I mean, it's probably what you discussed this morning, I wasn't there, but with the Silicon Valley and San Francisco, right? I mean, of course, they are separated, that the Silicon Valley people bring up the prices in San Francisco, so they don't have to talk to each other really, but here, they are so close together that it's going to explode if they don't talk to each other. So there's a need on both sides. The city, of course, wants the excellency and the international folks to come and go, but on the other hand, we need to find a way to communicate. It doesn't mean that everybody has to, but each institution could have an outreach program of some kind. And also, I think the Max Planck Institutes just found out in the recent years in Heidelberg that you cannot be on eye level with the city as a Max Planck institution, of course. You're way above, but at the same time, you have to have some link towards the governance of the local surroundings. Otherwise, it's a segregation that's kind of developing into ghettoization, which is not sustainable for both sides.